All right, Joey Lane is back with the views from the Schott podcast. Joey, welcome. You've had a busy past couple of weeks at TBT, and I'm sure doing many other things as well. But I want to kick it off with you getting some more experience in the broadcast world. Take me through how things were at TBT and the world surrounding broadcasting with Joey Lane.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be back on here. Yeah, first off, congratulations to Carmen Screw. It's pretty awesome. I had four teammates on the team and a ton of guys that I've known for years, whether they're Ohio State alumni or not. Getting a chance to see all those guys play together again, wear the scarlet and gray, take home the championship. Pretty stinking cool. Really cool. And more fun to be on Twitter when Ohio State basketball is relevant again. As far as me, yeah, TBT was awesome. Great experience for me. I got to call four games during TBT's first weekend. So think like in the NCAA tournament when you are nonstop watching games all day long, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those were the games that I was calling. I got to do two in Lexington, two in Dayton, which are two pretty cool arenas to call a basketball game in. The games itself were very fun, but not very good games. Only one game that was really close at all, and it was the fourth game that I called, the last one, so that was nice. But yeah, broadcasting world is fun. It's different. Just taking everything as it comes, and hopefully get some more opportunities come this college basketball season.
Yeah, and I might have missed some, but I know that you've called for Big Ten Network, obviously doing some basketball. You've done TBT now. Was the prep time easier? How does it compare to doing, normal college basketball? Did you feel like now that you've got a couple games under your belt that this felt a little bit more like a smooth transition, or what was that all like?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was way different for a lot of different reasons. Um, the prep time was less because there's just not as much on these guys, right? As there would be if you were calling an Ohio State versus Michigan State game. There's lots of games that you can watch. You know a lot about Izzo and Diebler and their staff and how they like to play and all that. So you can do all that research and watch all that film. And everything there is to know about these college players nowadays, from how tall they are, how much they weigh, where they're from, how many TikTok followers they have, everything. You don't really have that with TBT. TBT has a great website that supplies you with, how tall the guys are, where they're from, maybe where they went to college and where they play right now, which is a great start. But then from there, it's all on you, and it's always all on you. But do a lot of research on these websites to see if these guys, maybe they're playing in the EuroLeague, maybe they're playing in Mexico, maybe they're playing in Puerto Rico, and you got to figure out, were they first team all league, or did they not even play professionally this past season? What were their stats like in college? All this different stuff to formulate this sort of storyline that you can tell during the game. Some teams you spend more time on than others. Some teams have more info than others. So it was very different than calling a college basketball game. The actual game itself is very different, uh, way more physical. These guys are pros, obviously. The broadcast itself was different than a BTN game where, I've got the producers in my ears telling me what highlights are about to come up and all that stuff. Whereas for the TBT game, for the most part, you were basically on an island just because it was streamed, and you didn't have like producers working with you for graphics and anything like that. It's just different. But it was very fun, and because of that, it was a lot more on us, and had a blast doing it.
Yeah, and the broadcast world, the commentating world is very intriguing to me, obviously. So as you look out now at a couple different experiences here in broadcasting, do you have hopes and goals of kind of turning this more into a full-time type of role? Are we going to see in March Madness someday? Is that something you'd like to do, or where do you see the future in terms of broadcasting?
Yeah, I think the dream will definitely always be to be calling these big time college basketball games, whether it be on Big Ten Network, ESPN, CBS, TNT, you name it, right? Wherever there's college basketball, would love to be a part of it in the future. It would be really cool to call an NCAA tournament game. That would be awesome. I think that it could be down the line a little bit more than maybe the short-term goals of being, calling 2 games in a week, maybe, right? Where you feel like it's actually a job versus a special, contracted worker sort of agreement, like it was sort of this past year. I love the guys at Big Ten Network. I know more about Big Ten basketball than I do any other sort of basketball, so I think that that's a good place to start, and hopefully that's the short-term future for me. Would I love it to be a full-time job, or the potential to be? Sure. If that doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. I'm not banking on that. I haven't put all my cards in the middle, put all my chips in the middle, I guess you could say, for that. I'm working hard towards it. I care about it. I want it to happen. But we were talking a little bit before we started here that I've got a job that I'm very happy with, and allows me to pursue this quote unquote on the side as well. And um, because of that, I will work hard in both and see what kind of follow the mantra of whatever happens, happens. But knowing that I do care deeply about the broadcasting world, and I'm very hopeful that there's some real opportunities in the future.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Ohio State fans are the same way. I mean, I personally have some inside experience to how difficult and how technical things can be when it comes to like actual game presentation, and there's a lot that goes into it. And you've certainly at least captivated, I think, Buckeye fans' attention when you're on TV and getting the chance to call games. So
Thank you.
certainly hope that you get the chance to do some more of that. And then I guess one other question I would have, I'm just curious, and this is kind of how the summer guest series tour will go, as listeners know. This could be completely random, but I remember years ago when you're at Ohio State, I remember reading probably multiple different articles about you potentially having a passion in coaching as well. And you're the type to have the energy. And when I look at a guy like you, it's like, well, if he knows ball and he's got that type of energy, it just screams a player's type of coach, kind of like a Jake Diebler. So is that something you've thought about? Have you kind of let those thoughts dwindle at this point? You're enjoying the broadcast, or is coaching something we could see you doing?
I think that generally speaking, it would have to be an incredible opportunity to get into coaching. It's not on my short list of desires. It takes a special person to get into that world, especially in the college ranks. Um, Never say never, though. I guess that's a nice way of putting it. I think that broadcasting is the perfect marriage between my love for basketball and wanting to stay close to the sport, with also like having a life. And I don't mean that in a super negative way. I just have had too many coaches that I respect and I'm very close to tell me, hey, if you're not all in, 100% in on this, don't do it, because it's a tough life. Um, if Chris Holtmann, when he got the job at DePaul, said, Joey, I want you to come be on staff, like, would that be something I'd consider? Absolutely. But that's not saying it's a foregone conclusion that I'm going to be coaching in the near future. I think that it would really take a special opportunity to consider that.
And now you're going to take me down another tangent here, where you bring up head coach Chris Holtmann now leading DePaul. Not the most cordial of relationships between a head coach and fan base. Obviously, the fan base was pretty impatient by the time that Ohio State decided to let him go. But again, you're a guy who has played for him. You're a guy who stayed with Ohio State through the coaching transition. As you look back months later, where Holtmann's now at DePaul, Ohio State has a new head coach. Um, how, from a player's perspective, I think fans just see this as results, results, results. If you're not winning, you suck. There's so much that goes into coaching. So from a player's perspective, and a player who is on a team led by head coach Chris Holtmann, how would you describe kind of the aftermath kind of fallout of Coach Holtmann leaving Ohio State? Do you think it was fair? You understand where fans are coming from? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been well documented. If you follow me on Twitter or listen to my show or anything like that, about how I feel about Coach Holtman, but also the process and how everything went down. And it takes nothing away from Jake Diebler, who I'm thrilled to have as Ohio State's coach. I mean, he was a video coordinator when I was a freshman at Ohio State, so I've known him for literally as long as I've been an Ohio State basketball adjacent player. But I, yeah, I don't love how it happened. Everybody saw the writing on the wall that he was going to be fired, which again, that's hard to argue against just because you have to win, especially at Ohio State. You just have to win. I can't argue against that. I also think Holt probably was excited about being able to start a new chapter. Obviously, he didn't want to be fired, but there's also like, okay, I get fired in the middle of the year. Uh, I'm going to be the first option for a lot of teams, and I'm going to get my choice in a lot of ways. So there's a little bit of a win-win there. Gene Smith didn't fire Coach Holtman so that he could go find another job, or so that he fired him to start their process early, I guess. Was there an element of, hey, it's great to jumpstart the team? Sure, but that team wasn't making the NCAA tournament, and it wasn't like, unless they won the Big Ten championship, like there was, it was fun and cute to say, oh my God, they've got a great resume, like give them a chance, that's great. But for Gene Smith to sit here and say, I fired, you're welcome, like, I'm the reason why Ohio State started winning games and had a borderline chance of being on the bubble. Like, yeah, did he play a role in it? Sure. And I love Gene Smith. I think him retiring, he's going to go down as one of the greatest athletic directors ever. Our relationship is great. There was just a lot of things that were just annoying and frustrating, and it's mostly because I am so close to Coach Holtman and didn't want him to go, in the way he did. So I'm biased, and that's how I sort of feel about that. But at the end of the day, Holtman has landed in a great spot in DePaul where he has the whole world at his disposal there. The team is going to be solid, better than 3 wins last year. The fan base is really excited about them, and he's got a long leash to be successful there. And then Jake Diebler has done everything right so far at Ohio State, from the roster that he's put together to the teams he's scheduling to the staff he put together. It's all really excited. It's so funny as you get older. I have allegiances to more and more college basketball teams because of coaches I've had or teammates I've had that now coach places, and friends, and you name it. So, I don't love talking about how Holtman left. I don't think, if we're rooting for him to get fired in the middle of the season, like that's just insane. But it's neither here nor there. It's over with. Hopefully this is the last time I get to talk about it, and or have to talk about it, I should say. And we can just root for all the teams to do well now.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we both were on the same page in that regard as everything was going on, where to root for a guy to get fired is in my opinion, at least slightly evil. That's pretty messed up. There's a lot of upheaval and things like that. So we can move on. And one thing I did want to make sure we touch on today, given that you have very unique experiences as a player, but you also have the unique experience of you're at Ohio State with Thad Matta. You were at Ohio State with Chris Holtman. So you went through a summer where you had transition with a coach. So take me through, as we're looking at Ohio State basketball now. We're seeing a couple of days ago they're playing like players versus staff dodgeball and stuff like that. So clearly Jake Diebler is going to shake things up. What do you remember about that summer of transition between Matta to Holtman?
For whatever it's worth, that's great. And I'm not saying, what I'm going to say is Jake Diebler did not invent the fun staff player stuff. And now I feel like I almost have to like defend Holtman all the time, which I'm not trying to do. But with Matta, we played dodgeball in the summer. We actually played dodgeball with basketballs, which was probably not the best thing looking back at it. I actually hurt my shoulder pretty bad when we were playing because you're like chucking these basketballs. And then it hurts, obviously, when you get hit with them. So that was one thing with Holtman. We would like go to volleyball courts and play like medicine ball Newcomb, if you know Newcomb versus like volleyball, right? Like we did that. The summers are insane. They are so hard, but so fun. All you do is spend time with your teammates 24/7. You're either playing basketball, lifting, running, or napping or eating. Like that's all, and schoolwork is mixed in there, I guess, too. But the difference between Mata and Holtman that summer, I actually had been recovering from hernia surgery. So I was very out of shape, but and I was a little fat too, from not actually fat, but fat for me as a basketball player at that point. So it was hard on that front as well. But what I remember about all of our team workouts when Holtman came in was we were doing our individual basketball workouts and working on our offensive game and stuff. But when the team got together, we did so much defense stuff, and maybe that was, it was in part for conditioning, in part for establishing a culture, in part for establishing, the more important end on the floor for Holtman, which was defense. But it's also like, when you're playing together with a whole new group, right? Like 6 new guys, 6 returners, 5 returners maybe, and 8 new guys, whatever it was. You got to learn a lot about these guys. So we did a lot of team building stuff and a lot of stuff together. And that summer was very fun. Going into my senior year, that summer was really fun because we ended up going to Spain also. But yeah, it's the summer is a lot. Whether you have the same coach or a new coach, you are setting the foundation for the entire year. I mean, all summer long, you're talking about making the NCAA tournament and winning the Big Ten championship and all this stuff, which seems so far away, but it's going to be here before you know it. And it's a lot of fun because you really get to just truly focus on basketball, and getting better and spending a lot of time with your teammates when no one else is on campus. It's a really weird, fun time for sure. But when it's done, you're excited to go home too.
Yeah, and I believe that the team is home right now. They'll be back on campus here, I think, 2-ish weeks. At what point does the switch flip from kind of off season to preseason to where you're like, okay, we're prepping for the season? Because at all times you're prepping for the next season unless
Yeah.
you're in the current season. So is it, mid-August when players are getting back on campus? Is it later on? What does that look like in your eyes?
I think that you're it's always preseason, which is funny, right? You're always preparing for the upcoming year. Does that mean you are working on actions that you'll see Indiana run? Like, no, but you're not going to explicitly say that, but you are going to work on defending post-ups, which is Michigan State's bread and butter, right? Whatever, right? So you're always preparing for the season, but in the off season, there's a lot of pickup, right? In the summer, there's a lot of pickup with old guys, former players, like more guys are around the gym. Um, there's just more time, right? You have more time to work out. Like you're only taking 1 or 2 classes. It's less stressful in terms of that, and you're able to work on your game more in the summer and all hours of the gym, and you are getting shots up and bringing guys into the gym with you and having fun in that regard. And the weather's nice, and there's nothing else to worry about. There's no other obligations. Maybe there are guys visiting that you might have to host every once in a while, but there's no other obligations. When you leave for 2 weeks and come back, though, it is all preseason for sure. To the point where eventually in like November, October, it's the season, right? Or I should say October, November. It's the season, and it comes quickly when you come back. So you'll get a week or 2 to like get acclimated to real class and multiple classes a day, and there's more. You have more stuff that you have to do, right? There are obligations outside of school and basketball that you have to do, especially with NIL now too. That's an added point that I don't really know about. But then once you get back and it's September, it's preseason mode where you are, there are conditioning tests and you are practicing more formally as a team, and you're hosting recruits and going to football games and like all that stuff, which is very much a part of the preseason. So I would say August, you get some time to get back acclimated to school and everything like that. And then September, it's full go preseason. And October, it's the season, really. It really feels like it's the season because you are having full on practices at that point.
You mentioned one thing there at the end, the conditioning test, and I know that there's a few things that the staff has done in the past. I know sometimes you got to run around the shot, for example. Um, you can say no comment if you'd like. Did you ever see anyone fail a conditioning test, and if so, what are the consequences?
You just do it again the next day. There's no like, I mean, plenty of people failed stuff, and failing is not. It sounds way worse than it is, but um, you know, you had, for example, we had time miles, which is one of the conditioning tests, so to speak. Um, there's not much more of like a test than that one, I guess, specifically. But my freshman year, I ran it plenty of times before I got it. My junior and senior year, we ran partner miles where uh, um, me and Cam Williams were partners my junior year, and you had to run an 11-minute partner mile, so 5 minutes and 30 seconds each on average. And Cam went and Cam ran either right at 5 minutes or just under 5 minute mile, which is just insane. He's a freak of nature. And he went first on purpose so that I knew that, I was the one that was going to be a lot closer to 5:30. I ended up running like a 5:45 or something because
Well, to me,
I
it
had the
sounds like
time
you're
to.
the anchor. Cam knew that the clutch gene needed to be activated, and you were the
Yeah,
anchor for
yeah,
your partner.
sure, something like that. I mean, I know that my senior year it was me, Danny Hummer, and Kyle Young that were put together for a partner mile. So there were three of us running, and me and Danny did not run incredibly fast to the point where Kyle had to run his fastest mile ever, and he did by like 2 seconds, which was unbelievable.
Wow.
And we still owe him to this. Well, maybe now he probably owes me now that he's the $62,000 check or whatever he got. But
Yep.
um, yeah, people failed all the time. I mean, if you don't, if you remember Caleb Wesson as a freshman, he had a little bit of baby fat on him. He didn't make his mile the first time. Yeah, there were, we would run like 2 minute runs, like as far as you could in 2 minutes, basically, and you had to do a certain distance and stuff like that. So there, shot miles that we would run, where you would run, a lap around, stop, a lap around. Each lap is timed, and eventually you'd run a total of a mile, and you'd have to beat a certain time. And if certain guys ran faster than other guys, they had rewards that other guys didn't have, or whatever. So lots of running, and not a lot of basketball related running stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
running a mile has nothing to do with basketball; it's all mental. So lots of that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Just the stories and kind of looking back and bringing up names that we haven't heard for a while. That's really, really cool to hear. So I know we only have a couple minutes left. I haven't spoken much at all about my expectations for Ohio State basketball for the upcoming
Yeah,
year. There's a lot of hype nationally. I think once the portal opened, people started to notice what Jake Diebler was doing. So, Joey, from your perspective, what do you see Ohio State basketball as next season under Jake Diebler?
yeah. The expectations are fair because the talent is unbelievable. Getting to see them work out, like some of the guys, Bradshaw and Sean Stewart, and some other guys were dealing with some other stuff that you have to deal with when you transfer. So it was early in the summer, and they were working out, but not necessarily all together type of deal, which has been documented. But man, like the guys that they brought in are awesome, and the freshmen are awesome, and I think all the freshmen that are coming in are going to contribute in some way, shape, or form right away at some point during the year. The last two transfers that they brought in, the 7 foot foreign guy and the point guard who's played at a million different schools, including his last stop being at Kansas State. I think that they are going to contribute also for sure. I don't know much about them. What I'll say is, again, the expectations are fair because they're so talented. But remember that this is a brand new staff and a brand new team, and that there might not be, but there might be, or there probably will be some sort of gelling point and time that it's going to take for them to gel together. Just like in the past with a few teams, it took them some time to hit their stride. So I think Bruce Thornton is the rock. He is the guy that's going to lead this team all year. there are other guys that have been on the team, but no one quite like Bruce, obviously. I think Michi, his transition will be fairly seamless because he doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hand. They can play well together. I think Junie Mobley's unbelievable. I think he'll be, if he doesn't transfer to go get paid $1 million somewhere like NIL is now, he's gonna go down as a great Ohio State guard, just like Bruce has the chance to as well. Aaron Bradshaw's great. Sean Stewart's great. Parrish from San Diego State all these guys are great. It's just a matter of how well they're gonna gel together. It's really exciting. This year is like a wide open Big Ten in a lot of ways because Purdue lost Edey, but Purdue brings back a lot of guys. Michigan State hasn't been Michigan State lately. Indiana on paper maybe has the best roster, but I don't trust Indiana until they do something. They don't have a ton of shooting on that team. I think Ballo is awesome, but he also is like a black hole in a lot of ways. He's not a great passer. He can't shoot free throws, blah, blah, blah. All that could change. So the Big Ten is very open and exciting. I think Ohio State will be there when it's all said and done. I say that every year. So it's exciting, though. I think Diebler has brought together an awesome staff. It was fun to meet all the players and stuff. They don't care about me. The staff, it was much more fun to talk to them and hear their stories and stuff. So, yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, I live in Chicago, but I'll be back a bunch because I can't stay away. So hopefully it'll be for calling some games and attending some games. But it's not fair to put any expectations other than I think it's fair to say they're a top 4 team in the Big Ten, and that if they don't make the NCAA tournament, it's a bummer. That's the expectations I am comfortable with putting on them right now. If you tune in to Drive the Lane here in a couple of weeks when we start doing our first shows, we'll be mostly talking about football. But when we get to talk about basketball, we'll have the expectations may have changed since then. So we shall see.
One other thing I have to ask you here before I cut you loose.
Yeah.
If NIL existed when Joey Lane was a basketball player at Ohio State, what would that have looked like? Paint me your wildest dreams. Because I have to say, obviously, you were well known. Maybe not for the on the court production, but for your the intangibles, you could say. Like you were known. So what would that have looked like for you? Do you think?
Yeah, thank you. A couple things that, and this since NIL, and I know you know this, you have not been the first person to ask me that, but it's given me some time to think for a good answer. First of all, I would have loved to sell T-shirts. Like obviously, I gave away a ton of T-shirts to friends, family, my teammates, coaches, some of the guys in the Nut House, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever when I would see people wearing them, whether it was like Musa warming up in them before my senior night, or my parents wearing them to games, or my friends back home wearing them and sending me pictures, whatever. Would have loved to sell T-shirts and sweatshirts and whatever. You sell a shirt for $45 and you sell 100 of them. It's a lot of money. So that's number one. Number two, I would have loved to be in like commercials. Like, I mean, I like being on camera. And, I used to, obviously, when Ohio State needed somebody to film something, like I was happy to do it. If I needed to speak in front of them, 10,000 people, I was happy to do it, right? Like I would have loved to been on like who's the guy that gives cars all the time? Riker. I would have loved to do a commercial right for that or whatever, and get a car or whatever. That would have been awesome. Yeah, getting a car would be nice too, for sure. But besides that, if it meant I got a ton more followers and I was posting ads on social media, that would have been funny. But I liked having this like organic following where it was because I was just tweeting stuff and posting stuff and being goofy. I would have loved to do more of like the TV stuff or retweeting posts or people posting pictures with me or whatever it was. Like that's all fun and great. And would have loved to have some extra money in my pocket and sort of go from there. I wouldn't have been a model like Jimmy Soto, say, nothing like that. I would have loved to have a podcast. I recorded one episode of a podcast with Jordan Bohannon from Iowa about college basketball and our stories and all this stuff, and it was great. And we were going to have awesome guests, and it was amazing. And then me being not the tech guy, I could not find. we had chalked it up to, okay, like we were going to record one and not release it, but just record it just to start. And we recorded it, and it was not great. We could do a much better job, and we knew we were going to, but I couldn't figure out how I saved the recording and couldn't find it. And then the season started, and we were like, we're done with this. So that's a big what could have been. I would have loved to have done a podcast for sure.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is now you have one. So it wasn't back then, but at least you have it now. And I would encourage, obviously, everyone to go listen to Drive the Lane. I will plug that at the start and at the ending of every show, of course, as well. But Joey, appreciate you being here today. The stories always, always, always so fun to hear everything that you've got to share. So appreciate you joining the show today.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks as always for having me, and look forward to doing it again soon when there's a little bit more Buckeye Hoops content to talk about.